So, are you thinking about moving to Seattle and want to know what it's like to live here? Well, in this video, I'm going to tell you my experience of moving to Seattle and what it was like for me, what I thought was like really cool, what I thought was like crazy and wish I had known before. So, stay tuned. Hey everybody, this is Tova Williamson, and on this channel we shoot tons of videos of what it's like to live in the Seattle metro area. So if those are videos that you want to see more of, go ahead and click that subscribe button, hit that bell so you'll be notified every time we have new videos. We honestly get reach outs every day from people moving to the area, and we love hearing from you guys. We want to help when you're relocating to Seattle. So if you're moving anywhere in the Seattle metro area, give us a call, text, email, however you want to get a hold of us, because we got your back when you're moving to Seattle. All right, so this video, I'm going to talk about my experience moving to Seattle, Washington. I'm not originally from here. I'm not a native Seattleite. From North Idaho originally, grew up there, moved to Phoenix, went to college there, and then moved in Seattle in 2009, fresh out of college, ready to just like start life. And 2009 was like a wild year. It was kind of terrible, but made the best of it. And yeah, I've lived here since, moved to Lower Queen Anne in Seattle for 10 years, lived down there. It was awesome. I loved it. Lived in a cool little apartment building, view of the Space Needle, just could walk wherever I wanted. Moved out to the Kitsap Peninsula a few years ago. So live out here now. It's a little more like quiet vibe, a little more mellow, a little closer to nature, but I can still just like hop on that ferry and get right back into the mix of Seattle. So going to talk about what it was like moving here. I mean, the biggest thing and the biggest reason why I wanted to move to Seattle was the walkability and just the urban feel. I love that. I mean, living in Phoenix, if anybody knows what Phoenix is like, it's very spread out, very suburban, nothing wrong with that. But I just really wanted like that walkable lifestyle. I wanted to just like walk out my apartment, go to the grocery store, go to like do whatever I wanted. And so Seattle fit that bill. Super neighborhoody here. I mean, Seattle's got all the different neighborhoods. Each one has its own unique little thing. Every neighborhood has everything you need. I mean, I think people, especially if you like work near your neighborhood and where you live, like you can just like live in your neighborhood and never leave. Like I feel like people kind of do that here. Like you just are like, oh yeah, I live in Queen Anne, or I live in Capitol Hill, or I live in Ballard. Like it has everything I need. I don't need to go somewhere else to do stuff because it's just got everything you need. So that's what I thought was really cool about moving here, is just like how like into their neighborhoods people are. Like people are very proud of their neighborhoods. And one thing that I really fell in love with was all the cool, like charming old architecture and old homes. Seattle is, it's an older city. And so there's tons of just like really cool, like old craftsman style houses that have all these cool old features that like, you just don't see in new construction anymore. And I really loved all of that, like seeing all of these like cool old homes. I would just like walk my neighborhood and just like look at all these cool like mansions in Queen Anne. Like Queen Anne is known for like these huge homes, and it just was like really cool. So that's something that I really, really liked about this area. One thing too to note that I didn't really realize when I moved here is like Seattle has a ton of parks. It's a very urban area, but people love the outdoors here. So there's just like parks everywhere. Like for being a pretty big city, I was really surprised by how much green space there was. And there's a ton of city parks. And then there's just like these like green belts too that aren't necessarily parks, but they're just like these green spaces that kind of divide certain areas. And so it's just really cool. Like you can live in the city with all these amenities and things that you need, but then sometimes because of like these green spaces and trees, like there's just a lot of like trees and bushes and plants and stuff, like sometimes it doesn't always feel like you're like right in the city. So that's really cool. I mean, unless you're like in downtown or Belltown, then you don't have as much green space, but the other neighborhoods, it's just kind of cool, like all the different green space there is. And then you'll see a lot in areas, they have like these tiny libraries, which they're just like a mailbox basically, but bigger. And there's books in them, and people like come and put books in that they don't want anymore and they take them out. And it's just like this kind of cool thing I thought was like really cute and charming when I moved here, like these little tiny libraries. One thing that I don't know if it necessarily caught me off guard, but just Seattle's a really casual place and people dress really casual. I mean, there's like the joke that the flannel t-shirt is like the Seattle tuxedo. It's like everybody wears like these flannel shirts or hoodies. So it's really casual, and it's not always a bad thing, but it's just like casual Friday like takes on a whole new meaning here. Like people just like wear sneakers. I mean, even just like people going to work in offices will often wear just like dark jeans with a button up and like some nice clean sneakers. And that's just like totally acceptable here. So if you're coming from somewhere that people like dress up a lot, that might be like a bit of a shock for you because it's just like super relaxed vibe here. I remember going to the Pacific Northwest Ballet one time, and like people are in like jeans and Converse at the ballet, which I mean, like, whatever, do your thing, that's fine. But, you know, sometimes you're like, let's just like get dressed up a little bit. Like, we don't need to be wearing like holy jeans to the ballet, but, you know, whatever you want to do, that's cool. So that's just something that I think will take people off guard. And I read a lot of like, there's some articles like people feel very strongly about that and get like really mad about people not dressing up in Seattle. So one other thing that I notice and that's really cool is there's just a ton of farmers markets here. People are really into just fresh local food and there's a big demand for that. So there's just a ton of farmers markets. Washington State, like the center of Washington State, is a pretty dry, arid place, and there's a ton of farms out there. And even like there's farms all over really here, like to the north, east, southwest, like there's a ton of farms. So in the summertime, like the produce is amazing. Like you can get fresh local blueberries, blackberries, strawberries. Like you can go to the farms and pick them. Like it's just really cool to have that access to like really good fresh food. And so like almost every neighborhood has their own farmers market. And if one neighborhood doesn't, it's like the neighboring neighborhood does. So you can always find like local good produce here, which is really cool. Another thing that was kind of surprising, especially coming from Phoenix, is a place where you drive so much and the roads there are like so like pristine and wide and open and taken care of, is Seattle's roads are like full of potholes, and it will literally take like 5 years for them to come fill a pothole. I don't know if it's just because it rains a lot and so the roads deteriorate a lot faster. Like I don't know what it is, but the roads here, I mean, like you will just sometimes it feels like your car's just gonna like fall apart when you're going down some of these roads. And also the roads here and the neighborhoods, some of the neighborhoods are just really narrow. You've got cars parked on either side and only one car can fit through. So you're driving down and you see another car ahead. You got to like find a spot to pull over, let the car go by, you know, you do the wave and then you keep going. So that's one thing that looking at a map, you can't really tell that, but the roads here are super narrow and there's like these little roundabouts that you kind of go through. And so that was just a shock for me coming from somewhere that was like all about roads and driving, you know, to come here that you're just like, oh, this is totally different. Um, Also, the roads in Seattle, like they'll just all of a sudden turn into a one way. You'll be like driving down the road and then all of a sudden you come to an intersection and it's like signs that say like, do not enter, you know, it turns into a one way and you got to like go another way. So it's just really getting around can be a challenge sometimes. Especially if you're just looking at a map and you're like, oh, I can take this way. Well, no, that road turns into a one way, or there's a weird thing here that you can't tell. Like, so it can get a little crazy getting around. It really takes some time to get to know the city and like navigate those roads and like which roads are good to go down and which aren't, or which are bad during rush hour. So the roads here are definitely like a thing. One thing where I lived in Queen Anne, lived on a hill, and a lot of roads around there are brick and like cobblestone, and they're like deemed historic, so they can't change them, like they can't repave over them. So you'd get like these potholes, and I mean they would fill them, but like going down those streets, like your whole car is just like shaking. Like you like I'd have friends that are like, I don't want to pick you up and drive down your road because I feel like my car's gonna just like fall apart driving down it. So something just to keep in mind too, since the roads are so small, it's almost better to have a smaller car. Like if you got a big truck or SUV, like it's just going to be not the funnest thing to be like navigating down some of these like super narrow roads. If you're living in, you know, further out, that's one thing, but it's nice to have a small car here because you can fit in like really tiny parking spots too. That's another thing, is like parking in the city is like a challenge. The parking meter maids are out in force all the time. Like if you miss your parking ticket by like 2 minutes, you'll get a ticket, like almost always. Like some neighborhoods are worse than others, but I've been like 5 minutes late from my metered time and like already had a ticket. So they're out there, they're in force. I don't even know how much the city makes from parking ticket revenue. Like it has to be a ton because I mean, just the parking is insane. And the signs, like to say the parking, like it really takes a while to get to understand those, what those signs mean. Cause like every neighborhood has zone parking, where if you live there, you get a little sticker and it's a number and you can park there during these hours, but then certain hours, like anybody can park there for 2 hours. Like it's just, understanding the parking signs can just really be like a challenge too. And one thing too, if you get a bunch of parking tickets, pay them. Like don't not pay them, because they will boot your car. Like I have seen people, I've like watched it happen. Like the parking, I don't know how they find the cars, but they'll come and they'll put a boot on your car. Like I've seen it. I've seen cars with boots on them in the neighborhood. So pay your parking tickets if you get them. Like you have to pay within like 15 days, I think. Otherwise they'll like up the price and stuff. So don't ignore those parking tickets, like pay them, because they will like find you and boot your car eventually. Another thing that was really fun, I thought, was in the city when it snows. Like it doesn't snow that often, but when it does, like the city is so hilly and full of hills, like it just shuts down. Like we get like 2 inches of snow and like nobody goes to work. Like the bus is shut down, like everything, like people are like sledding in the streets. Like it's just like a big snow day party. Like it's really fun. So we get them, I'd say probably like every other year is when you get like the really bad snowstorms. But I mean, when it snows, I mean, it's snowmageddon is what it's called. Like, and if it does snow and you live here and you're like, oh, I can go up that hill. Doesn't matter. Like I've seen cars try to make it up and then slide down and crash into like 6 other cars on the way down. So, respect the hills, respect the snow. If it's snowing, just park at the bottom and walk up and sled down. Like, don't try to drive up these hills, because I've seen it happen, and I've seen buses like sliding sideways down the hill. It's kind of scary. But when we get those snow days, it's like really fun. It lasts like 2 or 3 days. The snow melts pretty soon, but it's just a really fun time when it snows, which I thought was really cool. Especially growing up in North Idaho, we get snow all the time. Like it's no big deal. You're like, oh, whatever, it snowed 2 feet, we still got to go to school. But in Seattle, like 2 inches, you're done. The city's like shut down. So it's kind of fun. Another thing that I noticed a lot and can't stand is dog poop on the streets. Seattle's a really dog friendly city, but people, for whatever reason, don't like to pick up their dog's poop. So you'll just find like dog poop on the middle of a sidewalk in the city. And yes, it is dog poop. And I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've like stepped in dog poop walking down the street, and you just want to like scream. It's really disgusting, but it's like, so it's happened like so many times. So when you're walking down the street, like look down every so often to avoid those dog poops. Like it happens all the time. And if you have a dog and you move here, pick up your dog's poop. Like shame on you if you do not pick up your dog's poop. It's like so disgusting. There's other people's stuff in it. It's terrible. Another thing of Seattle is bikers. Like Seattle is a huge biking city. There's bikers everywhere, and serious bikers. Like people are like diehard bikers here. When I first moved here, I like to ride a bike like every so often. I'm like a leisurely biker. It's like if you're on some of those bike trails, I mean, the like serious bikers, they will like tell you to move over, like they'll yell at you. Like I've been yelled at by like other bikers because they are like, it's like their mode of transportation, they get around. So just beware. Like if you're just like a relaxed leisurely biker here, like good luck, because it's a very serious biking city and there's bike trails all over. And it's a great place for people that like to bike. Like no, bad things against people who bike, but it is like people are serious about biking here. And that's a thing too to notice when you're driving, like the way that the laws are here, like the bike laws, or the bikers, like they're on the bike lane. And then if you're at a red light, the bikers just go sit right in front of you at the light. And I don't know, it's like, yeah, they're allowed to do that. So they just like go, you'll just be sitting in a red light and the bikers just all come up and get in front of you if there's not like a designated bike lane. So that's just something to get used to. And just when you're driving, like pay attention to bikers, because bikers, you hear stories about bikers getting hit a lot. Like it can be really dangerous for people biking here. So if you're coming from another area where there's not a lot of bikers, just like be aware of that and be aware of bikers, because they are here. Look behind, make sure they're not coming when you're getting out of a car. Sometimes you don't want to open your door and hit a biker. So just like be aware of that when you're driving. Like there is a lot of bikers here and you just don't want to hit people. Another thing that I noticed here and that gets like a lot of news, I guess, or people talk about a lot, is just like the passive aggressive nature of Seattleites. people here definitely, I don't know what it is. Like, I don't know if it's just the weather. People are just like generally polite and they don't want to like cause a scene or something, but it's really, people are like really passive aggressive here. Like, you don't really have people honk their horns as much at you, you know, like honking horns is not a huge thing here. I've had friends who have moved here from the East Coast and they're just like taken aback at like how like passive aggressive it is here. Like people aren't as straightforward. So it's just something to like keep in mind to prepare for. I mean, it's not necessarily like you take it personally or anything, but it is a thing here for sure. So it can be tough sometimes, like trying to just like get something out of someone. But yeah, I don't know, again, if it's just like because of the weather and people like sit inside a lot and like, I don't know, but it's definitely a thing here. And going into that, talking about the weather, when I moved here, I was like prepared for rain all the time. You know, you hear about it, oh, the rain, and especially moving from Phoenix, people are like, why are you moving to Seattle? It rains so much, you're going to hate it. Like, it's terrible. And I mean, it definitely is an adjustment, definitely takes getting used to, definitely not for everyone. Like some people just cannot deal with the cloudy weather here, and that's fine. But I don't know. I feel like I've adjusted to it. It's not as bad as people make it out to be or as you think it is. I mean, I try not to pay attention to the weather that much, and it seems to be all right. You know, then when it's sunny, people just get out. Like you just like soak up every second of sunny weather that we have here. Like if the sun's out for like 10 minutes, people are like running outside to like go hang out in the sun. I mean, not really, but so yeah, it's like the first sunny day that we have in the city, like after rain, after it's been raining a while, to be like 60 degrees and you'll see people just like sunbathing in the parks. You know, it's like not even that warm, but people are just like, oh my God, the sun, it's so nice. So it's just something that is kind of funny. It's like, you know, only in Seattle do you have like somebody sunbathing in 60-degree weather. It's not even that warm out, but you got to like soak in the sun whenever you can. And that's the thing too, like the rain here, I mean, you do get your downpours for sure, but a lot of times it's really just like misty and just like a light rain. It's not usually like torrential downpours all the time. I mean, we definitely have those like seasons or like times when there is like crazy heavy rain for a few days and then you get like landslides and like stuff like that does happen. But for the most part, the rain is pretty mellow and like not super bad. And that's why like you'll hear a lot of people being like, oh, you know, true Seattleites don't need to use an umbrella. You know, you can tell you're not from here if you use an umbrella. And I mean, I think a lot of that is just because the rain isn't that bad. Like you can just wear a hood and you're fine. And a lot of times when it is raining that bad that you need an umbrella, it's like windy too. And it just like blows your umbrella inside out. And it's just like more of a pain than it is to even like have the umbrella. So, you know, if you want to use an umbrella, use it. Like, don't let people like scare you out of using an umbrella. But one thing, if you're like walking on the sidewalk and you're like downtown or anywhere, like using umbrella, just like be mindful of the space that your umbrella takes up. Cause there's been times when you're like almost like poked in the face by people using umbrellas. So if you do use one, just like kind of be aware of like the space that it takes up on the sidewalk when you're walking. Another thing that I just like really love about the city that I found was Seattle's like all about food, all about beer, all about coffee. Like it's just an amazing like food city. Like there are so many restaurants. I've been here like almost 12, 13 years. Like I haven't even like gone to even like a fraction of the restaurants here. You know, like there's just so many to go to. It's really cool. I mean, there's just so many different like variations and diversity. And there's a lot of like award-winning, you know, chefs and restaurants here. And then you've got like the little hole in the wall, like dives that have been there for like, you know, 100 years, and the family-owned places that are just like so good too. So there's just like, it's such a broad range and it's just so cool. Like you will never get bored of like food options in the city because there's just so many that you can choose from. Same with beer too. Like if you like beer, like this is your place. Like there's so many breweries here, so many like new ones opening up all the time. Like there's been a few sadly that have closed, especially with COVID. Like there's been some really good ones that have closed down, but new ones are coming. Like it's a total beer city. And if you like beer, like IPA is like the unofficial beer of Seattle. Like if you don't like IPAs, like I don't know, you better start liking them, because that's like every brewery has like 4 IPAs on tap usually, and then like 1 lager or something. So like IPAs are like the jam here. Really good beers. Same with coffee too. Like people like love their coffee. Again, I think it's probably just like the weather, but I mean, yeah, you're just like, oh, I'm gonna just go have another cup of coffee. Like you just we'll have like 4 cups of coffee some days, like just because there's just so many coffee shops and you just get addicted to coffee. Like Starbucks is here. That's a huge coffee chain. And when I moved here, I thought like, oh, Seattle's such a coffee place. Like people aren't going to go to Starbucks. Like people are going to go to their local shops too. But it's like people still go to, like, there's tons of Starbucks like on every street, but then there's also like other coffee shops too. Like they all coexist pretty well, it seems like. There's literally coffee shops on like every corner almost. Like the neighborhood that I lived in Queen Anne, in Lower Queen Anne, I mean, there was like 4 or 5 coffee shops just within like a 5 block radius. Like it's, people are serious about coffee, and they all, yeah, they all offer something different. Like Starbucks is like the speed, the consistency, you know what it is. You just go in to get your, you know, whatever. Some of the smaller coffee shops, you know, they take a more like artistic route and they do the foam all crazy, and you get like the patterns in the foam, and you can just like sit there and people watch. Like there's just so many different types of coffee that you can get in this city, and a lot of like coffee companies here. So if you like coffee, if you like beer, if you like food, like this is the place to be. So yeah, that's kind of like the main things that I learned in Seattle, and a couple others, just like some of the slang that you'll hear in the city. So one thing you hear is like people say like the mountain is out or the mountains are out. Like that's a very Seattle thing, like saying it's like a clear day, you can see the mountains actually. Like usually when it's cloudy, you can't see Mount Rainier, you can't see the Cascades or the Olympics. But when the sun's out, like people are like, oh, the mountains are out. You know, it's just like this thing that people say. So that's what they're talking about. Another thing that when you say Pike Place Market, it's Pike Place Market. It's not Pike's Place. It's not, you know, like you can, or Pike's Peak. People say that too for some reason. But yeah, like that's just like locals are like, oh my God, like they can just tell that you're not from here if you say like Pike's Place. And a lot of times people just call Pike Place Market the market. And most people that like live here don't even go to that market. It's like mostly tourists. Like you only go there when you have friends and family out of town and they want to go see it. Because otherwise it's just like super crowded and like kind of a pain. It's not really worth it, especially when all the other neighborhoods have their own farmers markets. Like you don't have to deal with like the tourist stuff. What else? Oh, another thing that I get called out in the comments for too is when you talk about the freeways, you don't say the in front of it. That's how people know that you're like a transplant and you're not from here. If you say the 520 or the 405, you know, true local Seattleites say 405, I-90, you know, I-5. They don't put the in front of it. So if you want to like, you know, blend in, don't say the in front of the freeways. Vitamin R is another thing that you'll hear people talk about. They're talking about Rainier beer. It's like the cheap canned beer that you can get here. Good on a hot summer day, nice and, you know, crisp, refreshing. But, you know, talking about vitamin R, they're talking about Rainier beer. Another little slang thing, talking about, you'll hear people say Amazonians. They're talking about like Amazon workers, because Amazon employs a ton of people in this city. And so you'll just hear people saying like, oh, the Amazonians. So, you know, if you're moving here to work at Amazon, you know, you might be called an Amazonian. And then last but not least, you got the Seattle tuxedo, which I talked about a little bit before. That's like your flannel shirt. That's like your Seattle tuxedo. You go to the ballet with your flannel shirt and you're good to go. So there you have it. Those are some of the things that I noticed when I was moving here that was kind of like a shock to me, or just different, that I didn't really realize. So hopefully that was helpful and gives you just kind of like an insider's viewpoint of what it's like to move here when you're fresh new from the city. Moving to Seattle can be tough, especially coming to a new area that you don't know. So we want to help you find the perfect spot for you, but we can't do it unless you give us a call. So reach out to us, call, email, text, whatever you want to do. We got your back when you're moving to Seattle, Washington.